Good afternoon and welcome to the show. I'm Jim Flyzik. During today's show, we will discuss continuous diagnostics monitoring and mitigation to secure cyberspace with government and industry leaders. With me on the show today are Mark Kneidinger, the Director, Department of Homeland Security, Federal Network Resilience, Rod Turk, the Chief Information Security Officer, Department of Commerce, Ralph Kahn, the Vice President of Federal Tanium, Mitchell Sherfey, the Product Line Manager, BMC Software, and Ryan Gillis, the Vice President, Cybersecurity Strategy and Global Policy at Palo Alto Networks. Let's get into the topics and talk a little bit about continuous monitoring. Let's start with Mark Kneidinger here. Mark, tell us a little bit about some progress you see being made with using continuous monitoring to improve security of government networks.
Well, thanks, Jim. I appreciate the opportunity. If we take a look at this past year, a lot has been accomplished. We've had our 97% of the government right now is in process of implementing phase 1 of CDM, which basically incorporates hardware asset management, software asset management, configuration management, and vulnerability management. So 97% of the government is in process of basically moving these type of additional capabilities into their agency infrastructures, closing a lot of the gaps that had been identified by the CIOs and CISOs by those agencies. Another key element there is what's happening with the other 3%. Right. So as part of this year, we've also are in process of putting together a shared service capability for the non-CFO Act agencies. And these are agencies ranging everywhere from 30,000 people to agencies that have more horses than cars. So it's the full gamut of agencies that can actually come into a shared service environment receiving the same capabilities of CDM that the CFO Act agencies are having, but not having as significant impact on their IT resources because of the shared service environment. Another key element also is this year, because of the OMB passback, a fourth phase of CDM had been initiated, and that's going to be focusing on data security. So we're in process this year now to start identifying what are those capabilities for phase 4, and then basically what are some of the associated tools for it. But that was driven primarily because of the President's CNAP, or Cybersecurity National Action Plan, and taking a look at high-value assets and how we need to move beyond the infrastructure to actually take a look at specifically the data security area for those high-value assets. And I think that the last piece is really our BPA that has provided a cost savings across the government because it's open to the entire government, not only those that are participating in the CDM program, but all the rest of the federal government, but also state, local, and tribal. So we're seeing a number of states now coming on board and wanting to embrace CDM and basically to put that in place. So a lot of exciting things have been happening this last year.
Excellent. Now we'll drill down on some of those things as we move along. Rod Turk, what do you think over commerce? Where are you seeing progress being made?
Well, I just want to make the comment. I don't think the Department of Commerce has any horses. I could be wrong.
I got to think about that.
I don't know. But in any case, we do have a very broad set of functionality within the Department of Commerce. So I used to say that we had satellites overhead, and things at the bottom of the sea for NOAA, but I've been corrected on that. We actually monitor the surface of the sun.
Oh, wow.
So we have, from NOAA's perspective, very broad functionality. When you take a look at the horizontal plane, we have a lot of statistical agencies. We have the Bureau of Economic Analysis. We've got the Census Department. We've got PTO. Now, I mentioned this because the CDM program for us represents really the first shared services kind of tool set for cybersecurity, and that really is a game changer for us because it kind of changes the mindset, doing things collaboratively within the organization to meet a specific end. We started on CDM even before CDM was called CDM. We had bought some tools. We were in the process of integrating those tools. We had a presence. We had an endpoint manager that would aggregate the data. So when we came to the table for the CDM program itself, we actually had a number of things already accomplished, which really gave us a jump start into the program.
Excellent.
So we had training done, we had user training, we had training for the practitioners, if you will. We had clients on machines. So when Mark and his team came forward with CDM program, they really rounded out our tool set for us and gave us kind of a very significant leap in maturity level.
Excellent.
Now, I'm not going to tell you that we're there.
Right.
We're working very closely with Mark and his team, John Sims and such, to mature the tool set, to make sure that we're actually using the tools in the way that we need to.
Right.
And what we're doing now in task order 2 is we're moving more from the planning phase more to the action phase.
Right.
I'm interested today in moving things into the environment, making them work, using them to their fullest potential. And that's kind of the maturity process that we're embarked on now.
And I like the way you phrase it. We're there, but we're not there. But because, cybersecurity has so many dimensions to it that, no one solution is going to be solve all your problems. I mean, it's a highly complex area with a lot of moving parts, and of course, a way to get around the good guys. Ralph Kahn over at Tanium, how do you guys play in this, and how are you supporting your customer base with the continuous diagnostic monitoring?
So first, I'm really excited that CDM is moving out. It's DHS and FedSim have done a great job doing something that's very difficult in the federal government, which is getting all the agencies to move in a common direction with a common set of requirements. The way we support CDM, we're obviously part of many of the teams. Some of the early adopters like DHS CBP and DHS ICE have been using Tanium to take CDM to the next level, to take some of the requirements and make them even stronger. So from 72 hours down to 15 seconds. So DHS, CBP, and ICE have actually been able to use Tanium to do the things in the CDM requirements, just do them a lot faster. And so, we're very excited about, continuing our work with DHS and other agencies to help them enhance the work that's been done with CDM even further.
Excellent. Ryan Gillis at Palo Alto, tell us a little bit about how Palo Alto plays into this.
Thanks very much. So first, I would like to give just a little historical perspective, too, because I was around at Department of Homeland Security and National Security Council during the rollout of this. And if you look back at the capabilities and the progress that Mark and Rod are describing, that is night and day different than the situation that we had prior to this program being rolled out, where actually the Federal Information Security Management Act not only in some cases didn't improve security, but may have been counter to security, in that it required each department and agency to produce these massive paper-based binders on a regularized basis about the nature of security. Doesn't solve anything, and it takes people and resources away from actually securing networks.
Yeah.
So
I used to complain about FSMA like that, too.
Exactly. And so not only has the law been updated, but the work that DHS and the implementing agencies have done to actually have technology deployed that now shows them where they have assets, what the status and security level, the vulnerabilities within those assets, and then to bring in vendors that we have partnerships with Tanium and many others that provide different capabilities that both through CDM enhance that awareness and capability, give you a dashboard across the federal government, and allow department agencies like Commerce and others that are implementing technology on their own to be complemented by the CDM capabilities. So we see it as really a great thing and a step forward.
Yeah, very cool, very cool. It's good seeing people getting out in front of things for a change. It seems like for years and years and years, we just fix things after they broke. So I mean, this program looks like trying to get out in front of things to prevent bad things from happening. Mitchell Sherfey, what do you over BMC Software? How are you guys playing in this, and what do you see in the world of continuous monitoring and supporting your customer base?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here.
Sure.
What we're seeing here has really been helpful is around CDM, and the success of CDM is driving a lot of more mature, more evolved conversations with our customers. Before, it went very similar to what you talked about. It was just, if it's broken, let's fix it. A lot of effort was put on spot tools and taking care of that one specific issue. And there wasn't a lot of conversation around tying all the solutions together to get an end-to-end type vulnerability management, compliance, reporting,
Exactly.
detection, all that
Exactly.
tied
Very good
together.
point.
So now this program is helping raise that conversation to the top with the different departments and agencies, and now they're coming to companies like ours saying, we want to know about pieces from the beginning of the discovery piece all the way down to the actual verification of the closure and tying all it together.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, it's really the elevation and letting us present what we can do to them.
Yeah, I like what you said there too, because I agree with you. I think the big picture thing, I think there's an awful lot of tools that are in production today that maybe are not necessary. Maybe going to the cloud is a way to relook at that and what do we really need. But there are a lot of new tool sets that can replace a lot of the things that are out there today that take a more holistic approach as opposed to a Band-Aid approach. So it's well said. Let's talk about a specific program. Rod Turk, give me a program you think, a specific program you think is pretty cool, is going to really make a difference.
Well, I mean, let me talk about the CDM program in general for
Sure.
us at the Department of Commerce.
Okay.
I'm a big proponent of just basic blocking and tackling.
Mm-hmm.
You take a look at the statistics, malware statistics. For example, 44% of the breaches have resulted from 2 to 4 year old known vulnerabilities. That's almost half of the vulnerabilities, that are from known vulnerabilities. And there have been several of these kinds of situations that we read about in the newspaper. I won't mention them specifically, but they're vulnerabilities that were not patched, the operating systems were out of date, those kinds of things. When a major software company puts a patch out, they don't want negative information about their software
Of
being
course not.
so a patch is negative. So when they put one out there, they know it's serious and it needs to be taken care of. There's another statistic: 99.3% of the malicious files reuse known URLs for command and control. So the point here is that if you can do the basic blocking and tackling, block the URLs that need to be blocked, and the known vulnerabilities, you take care of the known vulnerabilities, you're going to go a long way towards a mature cybersecurity posture. I believe the CDM program, and we found this at Department of Commerce, helps us with that basic blocking and tackling, if you will. As Mark had mentioned, vulnerability management, software and hardware management, as well as configuration management. If you can nail those 4 areas, you're going to go a long way towards having a very mature cybersecurity process.
Interesting.
I would also say that what CDM has done, as Ryan and Mitchell have mentioned, that it is put together a bucket of tools that are coordinated, consolidated, and tuned for each other, rather than having a ad hoc process where you slap on a tool over here, another one over here. They're not coordinated. They're not going to be optimal in terms of their efficiency and
Right.
their ability to do what needs to be done within the environment. So
Interesting.
it's kind of like, and let me paint a picture for you, Jim, if I can. It's kind of like the Winchester House. Winchester House is in California, the Winchester heiress to the Winchester gun fortune. Back in the day, she was told by a seer that if she continued to build her house, that she would not die. Well, that in and of itself is problematic. But the actual house itself is architecturally it's just weird architecturally. There's a room, lopped on over here. There's another room over here. There's staircases that go up into the ceiling and not into any upstairs floors. There's bathrooms where you can't open the door because the toilet's in the way. I mentioned that word picture because that's kind of like what it's like when you try to not integrate your tools. You're going to get some function. I mean, you can go up the staircase, but you're not going to get anywhere.
Kind of like building something with no plan.
Exactly. So my point on this is that the CDM program is a plan. If you use the plan and you move forward and you mature in such a fashion that the tools are efficient and are productive, then in the hardware, software, vulnerability management, and those areas that CDM covers
Excellent.
is really going to pay dividends for you.
I like that. Mark Kneidinger, what do you think? What's a specific program, if something came to mind, a program you think is really making a difference?
Yeah, well, I would break it into actually 2 parts.
Okay.
Programs from a direct and indirect perspective. From a direct perspective, things that Rod had been talking to in regards to being able to provide the capacity to close those gaps and things of that nature is critical. We had our first delivery order 1, which touched 23 agencies, that basically all those tools and capabilities have already been installed. So that's made an impact. We also have basically from where we are now at phase 1 for all, for all 4 of those capabilities across the entire government. That's been a long road. So, what is, a primary program that is making an impact now is actually now phase 1 moving to the actual implementation stage. It's taken 3 years to do this because of the acquisition cycle. It was a big bang effort. Cover the 97% of the government at once, and be able to do that and close those gaps of the agencies. The program is successful at this point because we're now starting to move those phase 1 capabilities into the agencies. But we've also learned a lesson through that as to how we can be more efficient and expedite the process.
Okay, cool.
So a third piece of this is in task order or phase 2, which deals with privilege and credentialing. Now, this was driven by a lot of the work, again, from the cyber sprint activity under Tony Scott, as well as, in essence, 1603 that talks about really focusing on how we're providing privilege access and how we're providing access. So we were able to expedite phase 2 so that agencies have what they need in place more expeditiously, and to be able to put it in place more prepared, because as part of the selection of the agencies for phase 2 was also to ensure that the ICAMSI team that's in place in the government are actually working together from a policy perspective and making sure that the maturity is there to be able to accept these capabilities. So from a program success perspective, pinpointing a specific area, we're actually making a difference by putting the capabilities in place. An indirect perspective is also how we've brought the CIOs and CISOs together to start working together, building upon best practices, as well as being able to understand where there are common challenges and how they can work together to address those common challenges. So on a quarterly basis, we put together an all-agency meeting. Our last one was several weeks ago. We had over 300 people there, actually at the Department of Commerce. And so part of implementing is not only putting the tools in and connecting the wires, but also ensuring that there's a collegial environment that people, as they're looking at how they can use those tools and how they can best leverage that information, it is done on a collective basis as to how we can take a look at this information to actually address cybersecurity issues and threats collectively.
Yeah.
So I think the indirect and the direct impact that CDM has had this period, I think we have success in both those areas.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, it's amazing what you can do when people actually talk to each other and collaborate, and understand what kinds of things we're going to do. I want to hear from our industry guests, too, about specific programs you guys would point to also. But first, we need to take a short break. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. I'm Jim Flyzik here with Mike Kneidinger from DHS, Federal Network Resilience, Rod Turk from Commerce, Ralph Kahn from Tanium, Mitchell Sherfey from BMC Software, and Ryan Gillis from Palo Alto Networks. We're talking continuous diagnostic monitoring. When we went to break, we were talking about a specific program that we think we can point at that we believe is making a difference. Let's go to Ryan over at Palo Alto. Ryan, what do you think if I asked you to point to something that you think that really does make a difference?
Yeah, I'd like to build on Rod's comments. The focus on integration and automation is really something that I think by the government adopting that within this program, I think mirrors what you're seeing as a movement within industry. So we as a company recognize we've got core competencies and very advanced capabilities, but there are other partners within the ecosystem that you need to work with to ensure that the customer is most effective. And so, back to Rod's analogy, rather than focusing exclusively on just building one particular asset, such as the staircase and the architectural environment, we recognize that there are ways to complement what we do best with other partners out there. So again, Tanium has some tremendous capabilities that complement ours. And so we recognize that the customer needs to defend their network in a holistic way and bring those various capabilities to bear. And so the CDM program, by integrating those different types of technologies, ensuring that the end user at the end of the day is better defending their network, not just buying a product to secure against one particular problem, because what that leads to is a more complex environment that overall you have to throw people at the back end to integrate, and it just doesn't scale against automated threats.
Well said. Very good points there. Mitchell Sherfey, what do you think over BMC software? What if I asked you to point to a program you think is making a difference?
Well, right now our focus is really in the automation space. We have different sides of the house. We have a discovery side. We have a ticket ITSM side of the house. But on the automation side, the side that actually does a lot of the work that needs to get done, there's a lot of tools that tell us what the work is, and there's only a few tools that actually do the work. So on that automation side, we're finding that there's a really strong response from our customers where it comes to the discovery piece and tying it to the triggers and actions that make the remediations happen. So the ability to find a problem and do all that manual work that goes into the remediation and deployment of that fix for the customer is saving a lot of time. Right. So we have an insurance company in the East. They went ahead and remediated over 94,000 incidents in their environment with the tool. And at first glance, 94,000 sounds like it's a lot of incidents, and it's really not. And when you're talking about in the government space, it's not a lot of incidents. Right. 10,000 systems with 9 vulnerabilities is 90,000 incidents. How many times? When's the last time you saw a system that only had 9 vulnerabilities on it? It doesn't happen. So, what it does allow them to do, though, is it allows them to not only focus on the important incidents out there, which is I think part of the main point of this program, is to identify what's important and address it very quickly. But because I can address these things so quickly, I can now focus on the things that are a little bit less important, that seem less important per our policies. And what that does is it helps us reduce that risk footprint inside of your network. Right. So one interesting statistic would be 80% of the vulnerabilities out there today have a remediation for them available on day one. But it still takes around 193 days to resolve the remediations through various reasons like that. Sure. A lot of that has to do with that manual effort in between there. So having 94,000 incidents resolved saved this one company over 9,000 hours of work. And the idea is they went
the automation.
By having the automation. They could put the focus on fixing all the big things, and then it broadened their time scope. They could also put emphasis on fixing those little things. Mm-hmm. And those little things, just to wrap this up real quick, 99% of your vulnerabilities that are affecting your network are coming from vulnerabilities that are or more than a year old. Those little things that you're ignoring, they build up. They build up and they build up, and that's what the hackers are trying to do. Wow. It's like a little light to them. They're saying, hey, if they didn't pay attention to this little tiny thing, they probably didn't pay attention to this bigger thing. So I'm going to focus in this area and try to case them and find out what's going on.
Yeah, very interesting.
So tie that automation together, address the big items, of course, get those right away. But that extra free time will now leave up more time for you to remediate those smaller items.
Wow.
Make your system. Yeah.
Well said. Very good points there. Ralph Kahn, Tanium, what do you think if I asked you about a specific program you point to that you think is really making a difference?
So I'll talk a little bit about how DHS has actually implemented for itself CDM. Okay. So one of our customers at Customs and Border Patrol have taken their CDM implementation and combined it with Tanium and actually been able to answer the cyber sprint questions in less than an hour, right? They were one of the few, there were lots of parts of the cyber sprint, but the part that had to do with looking for vulnerabilities in your environment, looking for particular indicators of compromise and gaining the situational awareness over the particular issue, they accomplished very fast. So they were able to leverage the CDM base they had, take some newer and fresher technology like Tanium and combine it together in a way that achieved some pretty remarkable results. Going back to what Mitchell said about vulnerabilities, I think, there's been a lot of, that's a common theme in CDM, right? Let's get the vulnerabilities patched. And I would argue that the next step is to patch them faster. So when you look at large organizations, there are two huge problems that they have. The first is they've got a lot of vulnerabilities, and the second is that their systems of record don't tell them about it, right? So many of the systems of record out there today will tell you, yes, I'm completely patched, only to discover that 20% of their endpoints were non-reporting, and you didn't realize that you weren't getting the answer to the question 20% of the time.
Good point.
So one of the things that we do at Tanium is not only do we tell you, okay, very quickly, where are your vulnerabilities, but we can tell you very quickly what's not reporting. So you get the whole picture. One of our large military customers did that, discovered over 2 million patches that need to be pushed. Wow. We got those pushed out and fixed in 3 hours. Wow. That's a pretty big that's a pretty big lift, right? Yeah. From speed and scale perspective.
Yeah, speed and scale is a big theme right now on everyone's answers.
So I wanted to add one more thing. I wanted to go back to what Rod said about systems working together. One of the great things about our partnership with Palo Alto is there's been very little attention paid in the past between the data you get from the network, which is in real time. Einstein has done a great job instrumenting the network, looking for threats in real time, and the host, which is getting you data back 72 hours later. It's very difficult if you are somebody working in a SOC to correlate what's going on in the network with what's going on at the host. And when you look at what Palo Alto and Tanium have been able to do together, get that data from the network layer, look at it in real time at the host, and then go back to the network layer and take remediative action, right? We can cut off those IP addresses through our integration with Palo Alto. Palo Alto can tell where the things that have gotten through the network actually showed up on the host and what they're doing, and being able to do that in real time and automate that. So now you're in a SOC and you can actually automate the process. I see something bad. And in an automated fashion, you can essentially take that machine offline. Right. You can perform remediated action. That really reduces the window for the adversary. And there are customers out there doing this today. So it's pretty exciting stuff.
Good. Glad to hear about the evolution and how things are moving along here. Because, I think if we go back the years, we've been doing the show over 10 years. When we go back 10 years, we were constantly trying to catch up. We were constantly behind. We were not proactive, we were reactive. Now we want to move to where we're proactive, trying to get out in front of some of this stuff. Mark Kneidinger, what are some of the lessons you're learning as you're working through these programs? Things that might help your colleagues around town?
Yeah, Jim. One of the advantages that the DHS Federal Network Resilience Division has is that we actually interface with all 125 agencies within the executive branch, CFO Act as well as non-CFO Act. So when we're reaching out there and we're working with them in regards to the implementation of CDM, we do get a lot of great insights. We also hold a number of listening sessions specifically as to where we can continue to improve and prepare for the next phase implementation. So to your question, several things. From an acquisition perspective, the GSA FedSim has done a great job in regards to supporting the program. But as I indicated early on, the first phase of CDM, it literally took 3 years to move from the point of moving the BPA in place to meeting with the agencies, collecting requirements, going through the award stage, through the discovery stage, and now beginning the implementation stage. A lot of changes occurred there. But again, the purpose was we had to hit these 4 capabilities at one time across the entire government. So from an acquisition perspective, a lesson learned there is that as we're looking at the next phases, phase 3, phase 4, and whatever may come after that, how can we be more efficient in being able to provide acquisition tools that we can move forward these new phases in a quicker fashion to the agencies that are prepared and ready for those capabilities. And preparedness and readiness also includes the ability and the skill sets to have in place in the agencies. So we are looking at that specifically in the future phases. Second area is communications. On the communication side, a big lesson learned there since with the CFO Act agencies that are very federated is how can we be able to support the departments in making sure that there's consistent messaging as to be it the status of the program as well as the impact of the program at all layers, across the CIO and CISO shop, across various components, but also up to the executive layer, to the deputy secretary, to the mission owner executives who basically are going to be impacted positively because of CDM, but also as we look at future phases where they will be impacted in regards to privilege access and things of that nature or data security components. Communication makes sure of awareness as well as impact. Thirdly is also executive support. One lesson learned is when we're rolling this out initially, working with the CIOs and with the CISOs in regards to what the requirements are. They're obviously very well attuned to their organization, their agency. But for a CIO in a number of agencies, and this is not true for all, but for a number of agencies, for the CIO to be able to have the impact that they need on the component agencies that may have their own CIOs and such, in a number of cases, having the deputy secretary or the executive be able to provide that additional authority, be able to provide that additional emphasis as to the importance of the CDM program was critical.
Right.
The last thing is also, as we take a look at the CDM program and the BPA itself and each of the phases has sets of tools to support those various capabilities. When a contract is awarded, the contract's awarded for that solution that basically the contractor had put forward, the vendors put forward. In the BPA, there's always opportunity to be able to provide new tools to the BPA. Now, when a contract's awarded, it is incorporated in a number of tool sets from that BPA. But remember, the BPA is open to all government agencies and can be leveraged at any point. So an agency that is currently receiving tools and sensors and such from the CDM program, they also have their own budget that they also can take a look at what else they can bring into their environment. Agencies outside the executive branch, be it the legislative, judicial, DOD, Intel, state, local, tribal, they all have access to that BPA as well and the full suite of tools. So we do have the capability of being able to bring new tool sets through the BPA awardees to to that system.
For new technologies to get
Absolutely,
onto the BPA?
absolutely. And we're actually inviting that conversation. As you probably are aware.
And how would industry engage in that conversation?
Yeah, a number of ways. Basically, in regards, first of all, for those tools and capabilities to be added to the BPA, it needs to come through one of the vendors that's currently awarded. So it's a partnership there.
Okay.
The FedSim, GSA FedSim team has a whole process to bring them in and actually encourages that conversation. I mean, DHS has also recently opened up a Silicon Valley office to open conversations with vendors out in that area. I know when I go to various meetings and conferences, I carry a set of cards with me for our vendor engagement group, whereby we provide these cards and basically for the vendors to be able to have an opportunity to speak to the various divisions within DHS. So there's a mechanism for that, and I emphasize that because sometimes people aren't aware that that is a growing area.
I agree. I might follow up with you and try to get some more information on that to pass around town because I think it'd be useful information.
Yeah, give you an example. The last quarterly update to the BPA, there were thousands of new CLINs added to it.
Yeah,
so there is that opportunity.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Rod, what do you think? What are some of the lessons you learned through the process here?
Well, I have two.
Okay.
The first one, and I don't mean to be trite,
Okay.
but the first realization is that there are lessons learned to be learned. Now, I know that sounds kind of weird.
Lessons learned to be learned. I get
So
that.
let me explain that. Because the realization here is that everybody else in the federal government is going through a CDM process of their own. And the realization that everybody is in the same bucket trying to do the same kinds of things is an opportunity for us as CISOs to get together and to learn each other's lessons. For example, at the beginning of our CDM implementation, we created a working group based upon the tools that we had in place.
Right.
With some of the other major CISO and agencies within the federal government, and the result was fantastic. We learned so many different things of how to implement the tool. I asked many of the practitioners there to bring out their little black book and lay it on the table. Tell me how you make this tool hum. Show me your dashboard. Show me how the little tricks that you use to make your cybersecurity posture better. And so the realization that there are lessons learned out there that everybody else is learning.
Rod, it's funny because Tom Trezza and I did a Chief Information Security Officers Roundtable, off the record, private thing, knowledge sharing thing. And we had about 10 CISOs at that meeting, and a couple things were remarkable to me. Number one, a lot of them didn't know each other, and they were from large agencies. And everyone started talking about what they were doing, and the conversation just went on. Wow, you're doing that, and they walked out of there, and the feedback we got from it was, do this a lot, because this is a great way to have a knowledge sharing kind of a.
It sounds weird, but you don't realize that everybody else is going through the same kinds of things too.
Success stories from other agencies, things that work, things that don't work, and we're going to take that on as a mission to try to get everybody together periodically.
So the second thing is, very quickly, is that you need to realize that you need to set us expectations, because guess what? You're going to find things. You're going to find issues, potentially lots of issues, as you mature these tools. So you need to set an expectation that says, okay, folks, we're going to find these things. This is not a gotcha process. This is not about beating people up because they haven't put in patches or that we're finding vulnerabilities. This is getting in the ditch and everybody digging together. So from a collaboration standpoint, like Ralph had mentioned, that we want to collaborate together with all of the pieces of our organization so that when we identify issues, we get to fix them. And that is a significant lessons learned, because we just don't want this to be gotcha. When we say CDM, we don't want people running for the door.
Right.
We want them to come to the table and help us fix the problems.
Excellent, excellent. And I want to hear from our industry panelists on the same question also, but I think we will take a short break. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM. I'm Jim Flyzik here with Mike Kneidinger, the Director, Department of Homeland Security, Federal Network Resilience, Rod Turk from Commerce, Ralph Kahn from Tanium, Mitchell Sherfey from BMC Software, and Ryan Gillis from Palo Alto Networks. We're talking continuous diagnostic monitoring. We're talking about lessons learned. Mitchell Sherfey, over at BMC, what are some of the things you're learning through the process here as we move to implement continuous diagnostic monitoring?
So I think one of the biggest things we're learning from our customers, this goes back a little bit to what Rob was saying earlier around knowledge and information sharing and finding out what you don't know, is that the customers now are having this, like we talked, a more evolved conversation around security and automation and all the pieces that make up CDM. But because of the automation and things that they're taking care of today, it frees up more time. And a lot of that time is spent now looking at what is coming up in the future. So now we're having a lot more planning and discovery sessions with our customers, a lot more what-if situations. Here's some new features we want you to add, no problem. Everybody has that kind of a conversation. But they're saying, wouldn't it be really cool if you could have 3 or 4 solutions tied together to do this thing? And it's something that we may not have thought of. So what we're seeing, what the lessons that we're learning is the more that we can free up these agencies to handle the purpose of CDM, the more it frees them up to think about what's coming up and adding more value to the network.
An environment that allows them to be more creative as to what to do next.
Correct. Take that focus from the spot fix and let's start working on the future here.
Sure. Ryan, what do you think over at Palo Alto? What do you see as some of the lessons you're learning through the process here?
Yeah, so 2 things. Mark talked a little bit about technology refresh and the opportunity to continue to bring new technologies into the fold. I think that's an important thing for several reasons. One, obviously the threat evolves. 2, preventative and security technology continues to evolve. And so whether you're on the BPA already, you need to ensure that your game continues to evolve with that. And as new technologies come into the fold, new capabilities come in, I think it's important that the program continues to evolve. So we certainly benefited from that as we evolved new aspects of our technology. We came into the BPA. So it's not a single shot, and I think that's incredibly important given the threat environment. The other thing, and this is actually related, which is we were actually being deployed by a number of departments and agencies for our advanced capabilities. And those agencies need to look at how are the baseline capabilities for CDM complementing the work that they are doing. And so we sort of came to the attention of several of the system integrators and partners on CDM because of our deployments and success that we had in a number of agencies. And then the work needs to go on with the customer to ensure that each agency is deploying the CDM capabilities in concert with additional capabilities that they're purchasing and deploying on their own.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. I like that a lot. I mean, we've seen other situations where, the big SIs have the program and they're looking at what they have, but they're not constantly looking out to what new is out there that can be brought into the program and things like that. Ralph Kahn over at Tanium. What do you think, Ralph? What are some of the lessons being learned here as we work our way through this continuous diagnostic monitoring programs?
Well, so I'll go back to a couple of things that Mark said. First, I think I think we all know that the threats are coming at us faster and more furiously, and even in a little more sophisticated fashion than they used to. And we really need to have a look at the acquisition strategies that we have. DHS has done a great job with, kind of trying to keep the requirements fresh, trying to keep this rolled out as fast as possible. But they're hamstrung, right? There are just a certain amount of things that the process is requiring you to do.
Right.
And
there's only so much depth. Every agency suffers from depth.
And so, I think our biggest challenge is going back to GSA and the acquisition guys and saying, okay, how do we do this faster? How do we look at the risks? Because acquisition policy is set up to avoid risks, right? How do we look at rejiggering the risks in a way that prioritizes the risk of getting breached over, say, the risk of making a mistake, right? Because a lot of our acquisition strategy has been based around our ability and our unwillingness to make a mistake. So the question is, how do we make mistakes faster and less expensively to get to the things that we need? And then once we get through the acquisition policy, we need to look at, are we putting the infrastructure in place to allow us to roll out whatever we get quickly? Are we able to measure the value that we're getting for that rollout? Are we able to buy it in a way that doesn't require huge upfront financial commitment? So again, we reduce the risk. And then most importantly, are we able to obsolete it quickly? Cyber changes really fast. My company is doing very well today, but maybe in 3 years, there'll be another, somebody else sitting in this seat. Well, it's in the government's best interest to be able to kick me to the curb and kick the new thing in really fast. And as the adversaries, kind of get into this mode of even increasing their rate, those are some of the lessons that I've learned. Things that we can do to take the great baseline we've laid down and do it faster and more broadly across enterprises. I think those are some of the lessons.
Excellent. Very, very good points there. Let's shift now and talk a little bit about the future. We always like to end our show with sort of like looking down the road. Where's this all going? What will it mean? Are we going to get out in front of these threats? And someday will we be able to be at our computers and not be worried about threats because we've put in place all the controls necessary? Let's work our way down the table here and start with Mitchell. Mitchell, what should it look like for you down the road? What's the future of all this going?
Well, I think the future has a lot to do with what we talked about, the extra time that people are getting, the extra effort that they can put into other parts of the organization. IT systems are not supposed to create overhead for your business. A lot of times they do, the patching, all the things that takes care of to maintain them, keeping them current and valid. They're supposed to add value to your infrastructure and value to your company strategically, economically. Right. So if we can get rid of all those things that make IT an overhead, and make it something that can actually contribute to what it is your mission, whatever your mission is for the department or the agency. The future of that is going to just be a greatly accelerated velocity of results. Yeah. You're going to be able to put inputs into the system without worrying about is this going to cause a problem? Is this going to have a vulnerability issue? Because all those processes are in place to take care of it.
Excellent.
And now you can focus on driving strategic value going forward.
Yeah, I have yet to see an agency strategic plan or mission statement that says we must maintain IT systems. I mean, that's not in the mission plan. That should be something that should be like a utility. Ryan Gillis, what do you think, Ryan? What's it look like to you down the road? Where's this all going?
So I'm glad you said, how do we get to a point where we're preventing, right? Because we've seen such a proliferation of attacks and breaches that I think there's been a tendency for people to throw their hands up and say, you can't protect, you can only detect and respond. And I think whether you're looking at a data breach situation as either an agency head or a CEO, being able to say very quickly, I know somebody stole all of our intellectual property or PII is not a tenable place to be. If you move that into ransomware and attacks that have physical consequences, that prevention becomes even more important. And so I think what we need to do is look at cybersecurity as a math problem, which is right now it is far too inexpensive to launch a successful attack. We need to apply basic blocking and tackling capabilities like CDM, complemented with more advanced capabilities. So as within our advanced persistent threat, we are generating right now, based on our zero-day detection capability, over 1 million new preventative measures every week. That doesn't just go to a security operations center for people to sift through and figure out how to plug it in. That, in an automated fashion, goes to 30,000 customers on the firewall side so that the prevention is automated. And so what we need to do with this math problem is we need to stop manually defending against automated attacks. We need to bring machines to the defensive side and up front into prevention. We need to prevent not just at the network perimeter, but throughout the places within the attack lifecycle that the bad guys need to be good. And on top of that, then you have people and response to focus exclusively on the things that matter most and that people are most qualified for.
Very interesting. Very good point. Very good point. Ralph Kahn over at Tanium. What do you think, Ralph? What's this look like to you down the road?
So, from my perspective, I think what we need to do is begin to ask some different questions. Are we architecting something that changes rapidly, that keeps up with the adversary? Are our processes and procedures kind of set up right? Are we able to train our people quickly? Are the things that we're putting in place to secure our networks easily usable, easily deployed? Do they orchestrate together? Can you integrate so that when millions of new threat deterrences or threat detections show up, that you can actually prevent them and block them in real time? Can you scale to that level? Is the thing you're putting in place coordinated enough, scalable enough, and fast enough to keep out in front of the adversary? Because if you are, now you're proactive. Now the adversary is having a really hard time keeping up because the cost of them getting in has just gone up exponentially. Today, they can go out and buy all of our products off the shelf. And because the cycle time for using our products is really slow, a DAP file in an AV might take a day or 2 or 3 to get out, right? Well, the bad guys have that in their lab. They run it. They say, we get it past these defenses. Let's deploy it. Well, if you change that cycle time to seconds, now it makes it very, very difficult for them to penetrate our networks and our hosts. And when they do, they can't stay there for long because you see them fast and you get rid of them. Now, all of a sudden, we're being proactive about things. And I think those are the things that as a government, as a country, we need to be striving towards. Those are some of the goals I would be looking at from a vision and a future perspective.
That's excellent. Can you write all that down and send it to me? I think I could have a successful consulting practice just based on those bullets that you just rolled through right there as to what needs to be done.
At the risk of a second commercial, you can always hit www.tanium.com. Shameless self-promotion, sorry.
Very good, very good. I set you up for that one. So, Rod Turk, what do you think, Rod? Where's this all going? What's that crystal ball of yours say that's going to look like down the road?
Well, it's a very interesting problem, and looking at commerce specifically, our federated nature does not contribute to being agile and swift.
Well, there's a lot of agencies in that.
A lot of agencies, a lot of different functionalities. I think at the end of the day, we need to be able to be more agile. We need to move faster. We need to keep up with technology from a cybersecurity standpoint. I would be satisfied with just keeping up with technology rather than even trying to get ahead of it, because right now we lag significantly. Think about mobile security and those kinds of things. We lag significantly. But I think there's one other point that I have been pushing in the department, and I think in a greater federated space, is significant as well, and that's the development of a cybersecurity culture. So what do I mean by that? I mean a culture is a way you interact, the way you communicate, the way you do things within an organization, what you consider in your decision-making process, those kinds of things. And I think that we need to up the game a little bit in terms of cybersecurity and make it a part of your culture. So when you're doing development, you're doing DevOps, you're doing something new within your organization, you are putting cybersecurity right up in the beginning of that project or program. And awareness is there so that when that email from Ethiopia comes in and says they have $1 million in a bank for you, you understand what it is and you don't click on it. So, and that's pretty basic, but I think cybersecurity culture needs to be right up there.
But those
in our
people
forefront.
sending those emails are getting better and better and better. So it's not just the one from Ethiopia where you send $1 million. There's some coming in now that are really well socially engineered. So it's a much bigger process to get that culture in place, to realize what you're clicking on and make sure it's coming from a trusted source.
Exactly, and they only need one.
That's it. That's it. Mr. Kneidinger, tell us a little bit about what it looks like for you. What's the future hold down the road, and where's this all going for you with your network resilience?
Yeah, basically, I'd like to build on 2 points from Rod: agility and cyber culture change. Agility in regards to our acquisition process, so we can move quicker. So from a cybersecurity or cyber culture perspective, moving cybersecurity from an enforcement to an embracement. Because basically, as we're moving forward with the multiple phases of CDM, it does have an impact throughout the agency. And putting cybersecurity in place should not be viewed as an enforcement activity, but embracement, because it's securing the critical assets of the agency itself. Thirdly is also shared services, building upon shared services, leveraging the cost effectiveness of shared services as we're adding additional agencies to the program. And lastly, we didn't talk a lot about the dashboard capability that's going to be provided to the agencies so they can visualize all the issues, but leveraging that capability to also include not only CDM, but also the results of Einstein and AIS, so you get a very comprehensive picture. That's what the future looks like.
Yeah. And is that a priority for you for
It is.
the upcoming year?
It is.
Yeah, because I always think of it, when I think of cybersecurity, I think of the perimeter where, and then I think of the data itself, data in motion.
Think of the whole.
Components in the network and so forth. You have to take the holistic approach to it, and it sounds to me like that's the direction that we're going here. Well, like I always try to do, I always try to make some sense and do some summaries of what I heard or thought I heard. We heard about progress. I heard 97% phase 1 implementation is in place now, and that's pretty impressive. And I heard that there's actually thought going on right now about a 4th phase for CDM. For the data security side of the house. The BPAs are in place for all, so everyone has the opportunity to use the BPAs that are in place. We also heard that there's a lot of common direction going on now, and that's one of the big advantages of the CDM program. It's got the entire government moving in a common direction, common plan, and we're seeing some successes across the board, which is always good to hear about. We talked about some specific things. We hit on some blocking and tackling. We talked about the fact that we need a plan. You need a plan. We don't want to be just throwing things at things and Band-Aids again. We need to step back and have a plan for how this is going to work. I heard that we are closing gaps. A lot of gaps that have been identified are being closed quickly. We heard about phase 1 implementation being well on its way and phase 2 being expedited. So things are moving well there. In the world of lessons, we talked about the automation side for discovery and mediation, that we're automating things now, and it used to take a long time to discover and mediate, but now automated tools are making that much, much faster. We're able to move much, much quicker when we do have issues. We can address them very quickly. Speeds are moving up, situational awareness is being improved, and we're able to identify issues and correct them close to real time, which I would argue in the future we have to. Because, you know, we're moving to a world where decision making is going to be equal zero in terms of time. I mean, things are going to happen immediately, and things are going to have to be fixed immediately. Acquisition improvements are needed. They're getting better, but that's always been problematic in pretty much in my entire life in government, working in government. Acquisition timeframes have been something that's been talked about needing to move up. But there's been much better communications, and what I heard is communications with leadership and support from leadership, which is critical to getting this done. You know, you need to support from the top. We heard more planning and is being done, which allows for more creativity and more ideas coming out as to what can be done, and faster responses and speed. IT should not be overhead. We heard that in the talking about the future. That you know, nobody's mission statements say maintain IT systems. You know, it should be. IT should become a utility supporting the mission, and we shouldn't be worried about a lot of this stuff down the road. And we can't make it too expensive to implement, and we need to get proactive. I heard proactive over and over and over again. With that, I'd like to thank our guests, our panelists, for taking time from your very busy schedules to be here with us and share your knowledge. I'd like to thank our sponsors, without which we don't have a show. I'd like to thank the good people here from Federal News Radio that always help us and make things very easy for us to get done. And most importantly, I'd like to thank our listening audience out there who tune into the show each month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Radio, 1500 AM.